I was going under, and I felt the water coming into my mouth, and felt like I was starting to drown.
We were capsized in the water, and that's when the desperate situation began, a really tough situation for us.
In the early spring of 2014, Dennis Hopp and Bert Eggers took time from their men's retreat to go fishing on a nearby lake in northern Michigan. Ice had covered the lake just days before, and despite poor conditions, the men went ahead with their plans.
It was about 40 degrees, blustery, windy, a little bit of rain. I didn't wear my life jacket because it was so, I had to have such warm clothes on, I couldn't fit in a life jacket.
Problems began as they crossed the lake into open water.
The motor actually broke away from the boat, and we were in trouble from that perspective, and so I had to lash the motor onto the boat again.
But the time we had it fixed, we were virtually deep, far, far out into the lakes. And fortunately, the motor was able to get us back a little bit closer to shore.
They crossed the lake back to where they had launched the boat and began fishing. Soon after, Dennis's leg cramped. As he stood up to stretch, the boat rolled and capsized.
I've never capsized a boat before, but this one just went over immediately and threw me backwards into the water. And because I had all these heavy clothes on, I was immediately in deep trouble. And we were able to grab onto the boat, and that held us stable for a while.
The two were able to flip the boat back over, but it remained swamped. They spent what little energy they had left yelling for help.
There was no other fishermen because of the conditions, no one on shore. No one heard our cry for help except the Lord. It was just a waste of time to be yelling for help.
Yelling was useless because there literally was no one there. We had a good vista to see down the shoreline, and there was no one there.
If we were to panic, I know we would have been just drained emotionally and exhausted of any energy that we had left after the hypothermia was working on us. Hypothermia, it's a killer, and it drains you away, it numbs your thinking eventually. And so you really need to respond quickly and without panicking.
Bert knew hypothermia would soon take their lives. He decided the only hope was to swim for shore, leaving Dennis with the boat.
And I couldn't swim. I couldn't do anything because of these heavy boots that I had on. So he said, well, Dennis, I have to go to shore, because the cold is getting us. And so he started swimming to shore, and I was left holding onto the boat.
My fingers were so numb, I couldn't get my boots off. I had to swim with boots and all this heavy clothing and everything like that. I shouted, Dennis, if you go unconscious, try to tie yourself to the boat. I'm going to try to get help. And when I got to shore, I was so weak, I fell to my knees, literally, because I was so weak. Then I just prayed and prayed and prayed for Dennis. And of course, I was totally concerned for him. It was almost like survivor's guilt, where you make it and your loved one doesn't, your friend.
Dennis clung to the submerged outdrive with his legs, his hands too cold to hold the boat. In the stillness, he prayed.
I felt a peace, and I looked up to the sky and I just said, God, I am helpless. There's nothing I can do. And I have no capacity to help myself at all. And it's up to you. If it's now my time to go, I'm ready to greet you in heaven. And if it's not, then you'll find a way to save me, because I cannot save myself. And he just brought peace over me. And I thought of my wife, I thought of my children, my grandchildren, and I was kind of amazed at how quiet and the solitude that I felt hanging onto this boat.
Bert, now safely on shore, ran to a nearby road and flagged down a car. They drove to a ranger station where a rescue effort was launched. All he could do now was pray and hope for his friend's survival.
Dennis is out there, Dennis is out there. And that was so frightening and so difficult and painful to desperately, desperately, desperately want the Lord to save his life as well. So that was very, very painful for me.
Dennis remained alive and conscious in the frigid water for over 30 minutes until help finally arrived.
And then suddenly I heard someone rowing closer to me, and a man came rowing up in a boat to save me. And he came up close enough that I was able to let go of the boat and grab onto the gunwale of his boat. And then he literally just rowed me to shore, and I was able to kind of roll onto the shoreline because my legs and that were so cold I couldn't even stand up. And right at that moment, the ambulance drove right up.
Soon after, the two men shared a joyful reunion at the ranger station. Dennis and Bert say it was the presence of God that kept them from perishing that day in the near freezing waters of Michigan.
Dying itself, I wasn't afraid of. God was with me because I think left on my own, relying on my own ability, I had every reason to be panicking. But I really felt strongly that He was with me. And for that reason, I stayed calm because I knew He could do it, I couldn't.
There was this peace, and that peace really enabled us to keep our heads, not to panic, and ultimately that was a wonderful gift from God that helped save us. People say you were lucky. Luck is a roll of the dice. Luck is chance. It's one of the worst of the four-letter words because it robs God of His sovereign power, His grace, His continuous mercies. This experience was a time when it was just obvious how God's mercies were with us. There is no coincidence. There's God who is sovereign, who takes care of us every minute of our lives. And I was so glad the way it turned out. I thank God every moment.
It was God's presence in the situation and in my life that made all the difference in the world. And if I can hold on to Him and cling on to Him, then I'll be safe in whatever situation I'm in.